All right, good afternoon. We are here at the City Club of Chicago, and in conjunction with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and WVON Radio. I'm Dan Gibbons from the City Club, and I'm joined here by Rufus Williams, one of our board members and host of WVON's morning show. And we are honored to be joined by the Mayor of Rochester, New York, Mayor Evans. Welcome to the City Club of Chicago, and welcome to Chicago.
Great to be here. Love Chicago, and good to be with both of you.
Good to have you, particularly on the occasion as you're here for it now. How's it been going so far?
Oh, it's been great. I'm a lover of mayors because I am one myself. So it was great being able to connect with so many mayors. I believe that Democratic Mayors Association said that this is the most amount of mayors that have attended a Democratic National Convention.
What would be the reason for that?
Because the Biden-Harris administration has been great to mayors. We had a luncheon yesterday in which we celebrated mayors that have served in the administration. So when you have a president and a vice president who's now going to get the presidential nomination that has invested and understands the importance of city, we're paying that love back. So we are all in for Vice President Kamala Harris.
It's kind of curious that this is the first president that's focused on mayors when it's cities that make up the country.
Well, I think, I don't know why the answer to that question. I'm not sure, but I'm glad that we are getting that focus. Because of, I think the history kind of dictated that happened. Because after COVID, all areas of the country were devastated, but particularly our cities. So you had to put in place programs that would breathe life back into the cities. When you look at the American Rescue Plan Act, which is probably one of the most transformational programs, I would say, in a generation. It's why, Nancy Pelosi joked that Joe Biden's face should be on Mount Rushmore. I vote for his face to be on Mount Rushmore. And that is important because those dollars went directly to the states. I mean, not to the states, but to the cities. Yeah. And that is rare when you have dollars that go directly to cities. So we've been able to do transformational things in Rochester, and I'm sure other cities have. So I think that's why you see that focus on cities and then that reciprocation of love. And Joe Biden always says that mayors are GSD, and because we're on the radio, with the S is stuff, get stuff done.
We got the
Okay, there you go.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, so mayors get stuff done, and I think that this administration has recognized that.
How has Rochester evolved from the pandemic?
We've come out stronger. And I think because of the support that we got through the American Rescue Plan Act, I think we're also blessed and being in New York, and our senator is the majority leader. So so that also helps our state. But we've been able to rebound because of the dollars that we've used from the American Rescue Plan Act. For example, violence prevention. When I got into office, we had the highest levels of homicides that we had ever seen in our city when I got sworn in, when I took the oath, and we've cut those numbers probably almost in half. We're almost back to pre-pandemic levels because we were able to invest in violence interruption services, and that has really helped control violence. It's still too high, right? But we were able to do that. We were able to invest in senior meals programs that we didn't have before the pandemic. Our healthy food accessibility program allowed us to be able to do that. We're leading the cities across America with our lead pipe replacement program, in which we're using our own local funds, but we've been able to pair that with American Rescue Plan Act funds. So we've been able to really stimulate our economy, but also take care of a lot of the social ills in our community with the dollars that we've been able to get as a result of the American Rescue Plan Act.
You have to know, when you talk about violence reduction, and we had mayors that Dan talked to yesterday, talked to the mayor from Newport News and the impact that it had on violence as well. Here in Chicago, we just need to know more about that, about really more of what you've done and what you've seen as the results of the effort.
Well, for me, it's a three-pronged approach. It has to be prevention, intervention, and suppression. Where we fail as cities is if you think you can just do one. So you can't just tell somebody whose kid was just lost that, we're just going to do a preventative program, because they don't want to hear that at the time. They want to know what you're doing to go after gun offenders. So in New York State and in Rochester, we are the biggest recipients of what we call the Gun-Involved Violence Elimination Program, where we target individuals that are known to carry guns, and we zero in on them. And every week, I get an update on how many illegal guns that we have taken off the street. You have to be creative and innovative. We're one of the only cities in all of the United States that has a 24/7 ATF agent on call. Why do we do that? Because if you're a felon and you're carrying an illegal gun, you can get federal charges. that sends the message. That sends the message that, okay, they're not playing in Rochester, that if you're carrying an illegal gun, you may be held, and you may get federal charges. Now, that's more punitive. But you have to have that in addition to my violence prevention programs, where I'm giving people jobs, where I'm doing reentry for people that are coming home from prison. So you have to have the full menu of services. If you're going to reduce violence, in which we've done by over 40% to get back to down pre-pandemic levels, it's still too high. We're not patting ourselves on the back. You have to ensure that you have prevention, intervention, and suppression. You can't just do one without the other.
All important things, because stopping it in some ways, taking the guns off, stops it for now. But there's a problem that leads to that.
That's right.
In the first place.
And that's the preventative piece.
Yes.
That's where you have to really dig down deep to say, all right, let us look at this whole family from the family perspective. And if you have someone in a house that may have a single mother and the uncle may be coming home from prison, he's not getting what he needs, and he's living with that mother and grandmother in those generations, you have to look at the entire family to say, okay, look, the grandma may need a senior program. How can we make sure that we're giving her that? And then this person, they may have had they may not have any skills, so you have to invest in workforce development program. And for this kid, can you get them in a training program where they can have fun, maybe have a job if they're between the ages of 16 to 20, where we find a lot of our challenges. So I think that holistic approach, and that's that preventative approach, because if you are an individual that is working or involved in an extracurricular activity, you're going to be so doggone tired and busy that you're not going to have time to think about getting involved with a gang or picking up a gun. So that's why that three-pronged approach I am absolutely heavy on, and you have to look at it from a multi-generational approach, because if you give a kid all those things and they're going home to a hellish situation, it's going to be hard for them to get out of that hellish situation. So address the situation in which they're in to be able to do that. That takes resources. And I will say, usually the federal government was not a part of those conversations, but they have been under this administration.
Has it been a challenge seeking of resources to your budgets, because these funds that were coming in from COVID, from the American Rescue Plan, many of those are drying up.
They're going away.
And it's causing a problem for many cities. How are you doing?
What we did was we made sure that for any program or anything that we put on it, to make sure that we would be able to sustain it. And so we've been very good in making sure that we allocate funds to make sure that because they have to be committed by the end of this year and spent, I believe, by 2026. We made sure that we invested in things that we would not have to snatch away. And we have found local funds to supplement the funds that will be going away. We had an advanced peace program that focused on the northwest side of Rochester that was strictly going after potential people who have either been perpetrators of violence or victims of violence. We used the American Rescue Plan Act for those. It went away, but we were able to find local funds to be able to do that. And then for our infrastructure initiatives, we are also looking at other resources, both local funds and state funds, and then anything that we might be able to get through the Infrastructure Act that are coming through the federal government. I'm a banker by profession, so I believe in the capital stack. And that's just layman's terms for making sure that you pull money from all the different places you can in order to achieve that goal. And that's what we've been working on in Rochester, to make sure that we will not fall victim to some of the other cities where they are they're missing out on dollars because they spent things for the American Rescue Plan Act to supplement their budgets. We didn't do that. And in fact, this past budget year, we actually cut our property tax rate by 37.5%.
Well, I wasn't going to go there until you did, but you mentioned that you're a banker. How and why does a banker become mayor?
I was dropped on my head as a child. No. I think for me, it was I was always about community service. I'm a preacher's kid. My parents were very much involved in the civil rights movement. They were all involved in service. So I blame my parents for all of this because, they all the, you have a charge to keep, to whom much is given, much is expected. These are all things that I heard growing up in my household. And they said, if you are going to complain about something, my dad would always say, we are great at problem identification in this country. Anybody can identify the problem, but if you're going to try to change things, you have to be able to solve a problem. And so I was raised to, if I identify a problem, I need to be a solution oriented person. And sometimes that might mean you stepping up for service. And I think that's what I wanted to do, to try to make that difference. Whenever I try to run away from elected office, it's been very hard to do. But I think that it's important because I believe that I have an obligation to those that paved the way for me to blaze a trail in my own shoes to make a difference in a way that I can, in any way that I can.
I've been rapid fire. I know Dan has some questions, but let me ask you one more.
Yeah. I know Dan's just like,
no, this is great.
That's right.
So we talked before, and it was soon after there was a mental health issue that took place with the police.
Yes, that was tore our city apart.
Yeah. Can you talk about how the city's recovered from that? What's happened there? What's going on with the issues of mental health and all the things?
Well, I think that of all the issues that we have in our community, I often talk about gun violence. I often talk about the opioid epidemic, but I think that mental health is at the top of that. I think that they are all related. They are all interrelated. And that issue that we had with the individual that died in police custody as a result of having a mental health break. What we did was I have expanded mental health services in the city of Rochester. We now have a person in crisis team. Although our county is responsible for mental health, I've taken on that burden, even though we don't get reimbursed for it. And I've expanded the number of mental health workers that we have. You can dial a direct line to get a mental health worker, sometimes with a co-response, depending on the level of violence that may be associated with it. But a lot of these mental health calls, they are just mental health responders that are there. So we've done that. The other thing that I've done, which I never thought I would do, we call them our centers, but they're really our recreation centers. We all have mental health support workers in all of our centers, because we saw post-pandemic the effect that mental health has had on our communities, and people are less connected than they were. And it's crazy because we have more interconnectedness than we've ever had in our community, more social media, more telephones, cell phones everywhere, but we are more disconnected. So we really have addressed mental health with the all hands on deck, from adults to youth. And we've invested in it by putting dollars in place to make sure that we have mental health support workers available 24/7 in our city.
The other part of that then is policing.
Yes.
That's always been an issue, particularly when we talk about certain communities and policing. How is that going in Rochester?
It's gotten better. I had to rebuild police community relations because of what happened. And that's one of the reasons why I think the violent crime rate was so high, because people didn't have trust with the police. We still have a long way to go in that. When I came in, we had to have a new police chief and an entire new command staff. I recruited a gentleman from New Jersey to run our community relations as it relates to the police. Last week, we announced a partnership with the Urban League of Rochester, where we have a police substation right at the Urban League in the city of Rochester to be able to build those community relations. And for the first time, we're bringing a HBCU football game to the city of Rochester with the express purpose of recruiting residents of color and individuals from those schools to join the police force, although it's going to be a game and the battle of the bands. So we're trying to be innovative and creative to make sure that, number one, the force is reflective of the community, but also that we have policies and procedures in place to make sure that people are not victims of police violence. First thing we did was we rewrote our protest policy, because that is what caused a lot of the issues that we had in the city. So we still have a long, long way to go. But we knew that we could not just stick our heads in the sand. We had to be proactive to try to improve police community relations.
Well, Dan, you got to jump in if you're jumping.
I do want to jump in on that specifically, because you can't do it all, right? You can't do mayors do but you need to rely on state's attorneys, on your legislative team, on the state, on the attorney general. We have attorneys general coming in a few minutes. There are different levels, and they have to work together. Here in Chicago, we have, the state's attorney, and if they decide not to prosecute something that the police department is arresting for, there's a disjoint there in the court system. How does that all work for you? And as a mayor, how are you able to work with all of those different? I assume they're all elected officials as well in New York, and maybe not always with the same priorities and the same theories.
Well, I always say, and I say this regularly, and people get so upset when I say this. I say it's not me, but we. Mm-hmm. Anything that I've been able to accomplish or do, it's because of partnerships that we have. So quarterly, I meet with, for example, on the violence reduction front, the ATF, the U.S. Attorney, the Monroe County Sheriff, the New York State Police, the Rochester Police Department, the Monroe County District Attorney. Some of these folks are elected. We meet regularly with them to make sure that we are rowing in the same direction. On the state level, the governor of the state of New York, Kathy Hochul, has been extremely good to Rochester, as has our attorney general. When we sued, when we went after gun manufacturers, they were very supportive of that. The opioid settlement dollars that I'm using to try to bring down the scourge of the opioid epidemic in our city is a result of the work of our attorney general, Tish James. We were a part of that lawsuit. She helped bring home those dollars. So you have to be able to set the table. Well, I think the mayors that are least successful in this country, if they want to be successful in this country, you have to make sure that you use your convening power and your connecting power. You have to be a mayor with several arms like an octopus, and each one of those octopus arms have to represent one of the organizations or people that you need to be able to make your city run, because you can't do it by yourself. You only have a small budget, and then a lot of the problems that you have in your community, you don't run. You're not responsible for them. It's hard for you to stop gun trafficking, so you have to try to work with the ATF. You can't. Sometimes you need to be able to prosecute people federally, so you have to go work with the U.S. attorney. Or if you want to be a part of a huge lawsuit, you have to go with your state attorney general to be able to do that. And ours has a pretty good record of getting some results. So I think for us, that's been extremely important. I always say she's like the pizza person, because she delivers. She's delivered for New York State, for sure.
So speaking of areas that you run or don't run, how does education work in Rochester?
Well, I always tell people I got most of my gray hair from being on the Rochester Board of Education. I was there for many years. I spent 5 or 6 years as president. So they are independently elected, but they are tied to the city at the hip. We do all of their bonding. We are responsible for just about 60 cents on every dollar that we collect in taxes goes over to the Rochester City School District, although I don't control them. So it's a challenge. It's a walk. So what I've tried to do is try to be work in a collaborative effort to make sure that there are members of the Board of Education that put education first before politics. But like all urban systems, Rochester is a challenge. The average time of a urban school superintendent is only about 2.5 years. 2.5 years. That is very difficult to try to get things done when you have that level of transit, that transitory nature of superintendencies in this country, and Rochester is no different. So we try to work to try to support them in areas that we can. For example, buildings, bonding, infrastructure, which is extremely important to make sure that students are able to attend good schools. I'm big on pre-K. When I was on the Board of Education, we pushed for universal pre-K, particularly in terms of 3-year-olds. That's something that I am still very supportive of. We have a Career Pathways to Public Safety program that we support from the city level to support the school district. So I've tried to be there in a supportive level, try to make sure that they have strong financial controls, that they have strong finances, because the city will rise and fall based upon their school districts. We have no control over them from a legislative standpoint, but we do have bonding authority that we try to use in order to help them become a successful district. But it's a challenge. It's a challenge across the country, and Rochester is no different.
And 2.5 years you mentioned as a superintendent. How about mayors? You've got a 4-year term. How far are you into? I'm
now 2 years and 8 months and certain number of days in. That's right.
Counting,
yeah, that's
so
right.
It takes a while to achieve a vision as a mayor, right?
It does.
What's your plan? Do you have term limits?
We don't have term limits in Rochester, but I'm looking at my wife over there. There might be a term limit. There's an Evans family term limit.
I looked at that too. You said that. So let me check.
But I think that you have to move quickly. So my chief of staff is in here. She knows that I'm extremely impatient. And one of the things I did before I got elected was that I sketched out a mission, vision, and values for the Evans administration for the next 4 years. So that way, when I left, if I did 4 years or 8 years, that you would be able to see things that will move. And one of the things that we wanted to do was make sure that we made investments that would last beyond me. So if it's in infrastructure, our lead pipe program to be done to be lead free in terms of water pipes by 2030, boring stuff, but probably one of the most important things you do as a city. Inexpensive, but we're there. We will meet our goal by 2030. We'll be there. And then things as simple as my tree initiative, 6,000 trees in 4 years, because we know that the tree canopy in the poorest of neighborhoods are the worst. And thanks to Senator Schumer, I'm going to meet that goal. So we try to do big things in short periods of time, with me saying that I don't have patience for bureaucracy, red tape. So we try to do those things as much as we can. Builders didn't want to come to Rochester to build, so I said, okay, well, I'll use American Rescue Plan dollars, and I'll build 100 new houses in the poorest areas of the neighborhood that were redlined, and then we'll leverage that with other buyers that might want to come in, churches and other affordable housing folks, and then we did that. So what I've said is, my vision has been, let's do big things, let's think big, and try to do as much as we can in 4 years, and if a lot of it will trickle in further, let that continue to happen. Investments in our river. We were the only city that has a river, a lake, a waterfall, and canal, but our forefathers turned our backs to the river. Here in Chicago, you kind of embraced the river. In San Antonio, they embraced the river.
We didn't always.
You didn't always, but in Rochester, we didn't at all.
Yeah.
But now we are all in on water, and we have made investments there thanks to dollars from the state, and that will be there in terms of our reconnecting communities. These old urban, it was called urban renewal, really was urban renewal when you put highways to the middle of cities. We said no. So we are investing hundreds of millions of dollars to reconnect neighborhoods that have been dispersed because of highway projects that were there. And some of those projects,
Chicago was still trying to recover from that. And it was, and at the time, I don't think a lot of people were thinking that what the effects of that would.
Horrible effects.
But the most integrated city in the world is, I believe, in Chicago, but we're also the most segregated. And so much of that is because of that infrastructure.
The moats that we put between people. So we've reconnected. We did something called Interloop East, which was 8 acres. And now we're doing Interloop North, which is going to be probably almost 28 acres of developable land that will be there to connect neighborhoods back together. So this is so these are big projects. Some of these projects go beyond the end of my term, 2025, and going to 2026, 2027, which is why I gotta come back and at least do another term, right? But these projects takes time, but the table has been set. So if I was to say today I'm out of here, anybody coming in, they'll be able to come in with a strong bond rating, with strong fiscal controls, with strong infrastructure, with strong programs, and I think that's what mayors have to do.
It's probably good to get context, and if Dan hadn't started asking all these questions at first, he would have done so. But give us the demographics of Rochester.
Rochester is a very extremely diverse city. We're probably about 45% African American, 10 to 12% Latino, the rest white. So we're just almost a third, close, little more African American. So extremely diverse city.
Are you finding the population of the city growing, and in what ways?
So Rochester has grown for the first time in almost 70 years since the last census. The key is how do you continue to sustain that? So we have had great population growth, but with that comes challenges, particularly in the area of housing, right? So we have to continue to focus on that. But we've built in the last 3 years thousands of both affordable and market rate housing units in the city of Rochester.
Have you dealt with the issues of immigration and homelessness as we have in many of our
yes. Yeah, homelessness is a challenge in our community, and we did support Mayor Adams. We took in Rochester, we were a medium-sized city, but we took about 300 migrants that from the influx that came into New York City. We did take some of those folks, and I'm happy to report that none of them are in temporary housing. All the ones that we took, they are now employed, and they are now all housed. A few left and went to other places, but most of them are now fully integrated into our city. Because we said if we were going to do that, we wanted to make sure that they were going to be a resource to our community, and we have found that they have been. They want to work, and we found ways to put them to work.
I want to ask you a question about the issues of the day. You're here for the Democratic National Convention. Share your thoughts on what has taken place as you talked about the Harris-Biden Harris.
Yeah.
I've shifted it on.
That's right.
We're getting used to that, right? We're all getting used to that.
Right.
You talked about the connection of mayors to the Biden-Harris administration. Talk about what the sentiment is for mayors now, as it looks like we now have potential President Harris coming in, and what the expectation is, and how you feel about how we got to this.
I think that there's a big excitement. I mean, obviously the mayors, we were riding with Joe Biden until he decided that he didn't want to ride no more, right? And we were very clear on that. Both Democratic Mayors Association, African American Mayors Association we were riding with him. But when he decided to endorse her, we almost immediately followed suit. The mayors, I know particularly the Democratic Mayors Association did. We have a sense of happiness because we know that she was a part of an administration that valued mayors. So our expectation and hope would be that mayors would continue to play a major role in a Harris administration, because we believe that she cares about cities, she cares about mayors. So we are extremely, extremely excited about the prospect of a Harris administration.
We heard yesterday that there are three parties in the United States: the Democratic Party,
Republican Party, and mayors.
And mayors.
That's right. That's right. And remember, Lyndon Johnson said, every time I think about, and I'm paraphrasing here, every time I think about all the challenges that I have as president, I sit back and say, at least I'm not a mayor.
Yeah.
Because that tells you the challenges that mayors deal with on a regular, everyday basis. We don't have the luxury of kicking the can down the road. We have to deal with the here and now. We have to solve the problems of the day that we have here and now. And that's why I think Joe Biden and others looked to mayors to come in and help with his administration, be it you can go down the list of names, Keisha Lance Bottoms or Mayor Pete Buttigieg. I mean, you can go on and on of mayors that have served in this administration.
Yeah, Steve Benjamin.
Sure. One of my yes.
Well, Mayor, we're going to keep looking to you. You've got some great things going in Rochester, and we in Chicago, we appreciate what other cities are doing and try to help bring some of those ideas here. So we're going to keep an eye on what you've got going there, and we hope you'll come back and join us and give us a little bit of an update on how that's all going.
I love
at City Club in Chicago. And you're welcome anytime back in Chicago, of course, and at City Club of Chicago. We've got Rufus here with the WVON. We're happy to share some of your message with all of Chicago over the next week or so. And it's been an honor to have you here. Rufus, anything you want to close out?
I appreciate you being here. Appreciate you coming and spending some time and sharing what's going on in Rochester. It's been wonderful.
Well, thanks for having me. And anytime I can get some good deep dish pizza, I'm back. I love it.
Yeah, we'll serve that up.
It's always here.
All right, Mayor Malik Evans from Rochester, New York. It's great to have you here at City Club in partnership with the U.S. Conference of Mayors and WVON Radio. We hope you enjoy the rest of your stay in Chicago and welcome you back anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks, guys.